The opinions expressed on this program are those of the program hosts and their guests and are not necessarily those of WSTU, St. Mary's Episcopal Church, and Temple Beit Chaim. Products that may be mentioned are not necessarily intended as an endorsement. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited. And now, WSTU presents A Priest and a Rabbi. Call in with questions and comments at 220-9788. 220-WSTU. Now, here's your host.
Good morning on this beautiful Friday morning here in Stuart, Florida, the mecca of something, I think sailfish here in Martin County. We are so happy to have you here. My name is Father Christian Anderson from St. Mary's Episcopal Church. And to my right, of course, is the best looking rabbi you have ever seen this side of the Jordan River. It is Rabbi Matthew Durbin from Temple Beit Chaim. And we are so happy to have you here because, well, you're the other half of the show. So Rabbi, what's going on, buddy?
Which half? The first half, the second half, the better half, the
introduction to the show makes it sound like you're not the good half because it says a priest and a rabbi.
Well, it's because we Jews are the afterthought.
Right. So that's why we do the show, right? We're trying to switch things up so you're not an afterthought, right?
Yes.
So, do you feel that this show has helped us with afterthoughts of our Judeo-Christian community?
No, I definitely think the show has definitely helped in terms of awareness. Mm-hmm. And certainly, the topics that we've discussed. I know that there have been times where, just to give it a little bit of credence here, I just finished a 3-week crash course in Judaism.
I was about to bring that up.
Right. So we appropriately and aptly called it a taste of Judaism, supported by our major movement, the Union for Reform Judaism. And I had a woman who had joined us. We had about 70 some odd people who joined us, which was
about or a boot. I wasn't sure. I thought Brian Adams just got in the studio here.
As long as it's not Alanis Morissette.
Okay. So you had a boot.
But we had I had a lady who had joined us, and just I kind of asked her how'd she hear about us, and she said, I heard you on the radio. Which means that we are, our base is expanding and people are listening.
People are listening. You guys are out there. Thank you.
Yeah.
You might be in your car right now being like, wait a minute, I was expecting Rush Limbaugh and I got these two clowns, but
yeah.
Hey, you got to mix it up sometimes.
We have to mix it up.
Rush pays for the bills around here, but you don't get fun and Wiley until you get us. Isn't that right, Miggity Mike?
Oh, that's 100% correct.
Yeah. That's Miggity Mike, our producer. So, all right. So we also have a podcast here for this show, Priest and a Rabbi. It's your first time tuning in. We explore a lot of different topics, mainly always based on faith. And these topics live on for a Priest and a Rabbi podcast. You can always just go into Google and just put that in there and you'll see us on any platform, whether it's Apple, Stitcher, Google Play. Download, comment, like, share, and you can hear other episodes that we've taken on and see how we get wily and fun with each other. Today, Rabuni, we're going to be taking on, on foster care, talking about that topic, and we have an awesome guest about that. Mm-hmm. But in particular, you and I want to talk about this because, you and I, the biggest themes that come across us, our desks and on the show is really a lot of it surrounds about God's community and how are we are part of this beloved community? How do we care for this community? And so you had brought this forward because, in the scripture, I was looking through scripture and over at least 27 times, the word is talking about, I'm including the Christian scripture too, talking about caring for the orphan and caring for the widow. They pair the two together. And then if you look at some bigger ways of just how it's like slightly referenced, we got at least 41 times throughout scripture. And so this is a big piece. And it's funny, the term orphan's not really used that much anymore in modern talk. Do you hear the word orphan used? Do people talk to you like, hey, I'm going to go to the orphanage, Rabbi? How do I volunteer at the orphanage anymore? That was more like Les Mis, It's not like you're going to listen to a period piece.
Or Mrs. Hannity from Annie.
Yeah, well, sure, exactly. So we're going to the stage, right? So there's not a lot of orphanages around.
We tend to really use the term orphan in and of itself, given its literal context, right? So if I lose both my parents, I'm an orphan, right? I have no parents, and I think given the topic we're discussing today. The Bible does make it very clear, right? Defend the widow, support the orphan. But I think we need to understand in our context today, what does that orphan mean? Is it somebody without parents, or is it somebody that may have a very challenging and distressing situation within the parental life to which they need or should acquire further support to get them out of that distressing household, if that makes sense?
Yes. And so that's going to be a big topic for us, is taking that piece of scripture, defend the orphan and the widow. Are we as a Judeo-Christian community, or just as a civilization in general, a Western civilization, really dropping the ball on that, since it's a big topic for God, should be a big topic for us. Are we? And we'll talk about the widow, not to leave the widow behind, but we'll I'm just soon in the future, we'll talk about the widow. But today we're going to focus on the orphan, the umbrella term of orphan, and also foster care system. And we brought in an amazing expert about that. And so, Rabbi,
I think if we broke it down biblically,
sure,
right, and we think to ourselves, there are many themes throughout the Bible to which we subscribe to, right? The social, the ethical, the moral values to which are really important. So why the imperative to support the orphan in our midst?
Exactly.
And I think part of that goes back to our understanding of what it means to be part of a community, right? The notion that if one is distressed or one is challenged, it is absolutely our responsibility to care. And I think that's the key term, is caring for the widow, caring for the orphan, caring for those that are challenged or distressed in any way, so that we can actually make a positive impact and to support them on their journey.
Now, do you think, we've talked about this before, we talked about this yesterday as well, is that does the American culture, the American culture, what we're built upon is of this rugged individualism, right? And you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and we broke away from the monarchy, the people who you worship when you're in Canada, but we pulled away from the monarchy and we formed this country, and we have this thing, it's really a huge value of ours, is rugged individualism. Does that push back against this call, this biblical call? And I find it sometimes as a priest, that from a sermonic standpoint, when I'm preaching, or from a pastoring standpoint, that the American, our value of individualism does run up. It's countercultural to the biblical call. So if someone slips through the cracks, sometimes our notion as Americans is like, hey, listen, that's them, and they made some bad choices, and they're on the streets, and listen, they made their own bed. They made their own bed, and they got to live with that. Where in some other societies, where when we've gone out, and you and I might differ on this, in Indonesia or in other countries that Anastasia and I, especially in Ghana, you don't fall through the cracks there. I mean, the family system is so tight. They have a different relationship with criminality and alcoholism. It's a lot different than it is here. It's not as bad, but still, Uncle Joey doesn't fall through the cracks if he's struggling with life and he's not going to sleep on the streets, or a little kid whose parents died. There's going to be a cousin or someone's going to pull out and say, you are staying with us and living with us. And the way they build houses reflects that, where they have lots and lots of rooms. So are we always going to struggle with this as Americans?
But I wonder too, when you look at areas and countries throughout the world like Ghana, or you look at Indonesia, or you look at other instances throughout the world, do they have the institutions in place to be able to accommodate for those challenges, or is it based on familial in terms of, exactly. We are one family? I mean, I think one of the amazing and inspiring things that this country has done is just take a look, do a Google search on how many institutions and organizations are out there that pride themselves on the ability to make a difference, to have these policies and these practices in place. The one we have today.
Right, the one we have today. And yet, and I'm sure that Rhoda's going to tell us what we bring her on here, just a hot second, is that unfortunately, when we get to these private groups, that sometimes it's too late. Like, we don't want to get to our guest is amazing, but we want to put her out of work. We don't want to get to the place where we have kids who need to be fostered. I mean, you and I are trying to work where we're trying to beef up the family system, so we don't have the situations where kids are in these situations. I mean, sometimes, listen, death happens and all these things, but when we have these broken families and issues, and so, hey, let me shut up and let's bring on our guest, because she knows a lot more than I do. Miss Rhoda Cantor, who's from the Camelot Community Care Center. You, my dear, are a foster care
recruitment and licensing specialist.
Boom. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you here. And I know that the rabbi is a special person in your life, and that's how we found you.
Yes. Thank you for having me on here. I'm very excited to be here.
Okay. Now you yourself, because since this is a priest and rabbi show, you yourself, you are a woman of faith?
Yes.
Question mark?
Yes. Yes.
Sure. Why not? I'm sitting between a priest and a rabbi. Might as well say yes. No, but it's great. And you know the rabbi personally, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. Do you
I am
attend
Jewish.
the
He is
temple?
my rabbi.
And you attend the temple?
Yes.
That I am. Do a lot of people in your congregation say he's the best looking rabbi this side of the Jordan River? Has that term made its way from the radio show to the temple?
No, but I can help start that if you'd like.
God bless you, my sister. Okay. All right. So,
You know what's going to happen is I'm going to do services tonight, and someone's going to say,
would you be mad at me?
no,
Yay.
it's a sign of endearment.
Awesome. All right, my dear. So tell me, so just give a little, just give us the Twitter feed on what you do and over at Camelot and how you your role is responding to the need the foster care system.
So I've been in social work now for 12 years. I've been with Camelot for a little over 5 years. I've been in licensing now for about 12 years. So what we do is we recruit, we license, and we provide support for foster parents. So I go out there and I network and I try to raise awareness for the need for foster parents in this circuit.
Great.
So just from an interest and passion perspective, what brought you into this line of work?
Great question from the rabbi. 500 points.
Oh, that's an interesting story. When I first moved down to Florida, I'm from Kentucky. I was teaching and I was switching careers and I didn't know what to do. And my uncle knew somebody from the car line at school who worked for, at the time, DCF, Department of Children and Families. And he said, oh, Rhoda, call this person. And she happened to work for DCF. I talked to her. I took the classes. That was about 18 years ago. And I thought, well, I'll be doing this for 6 months maybe, and then I'll find something else. And now, almost 18 years later, here I am. So I started off.
What kept you? Is it because just you started as a teacher, so you do have a natural inclination to work with the young ones, or what? Where's the passion? What attracted you? That's kept you in the game?
Oh, I just love working with people, and I love working with children. And if you've talked with children, they tell you so many interesting stories. And I grew up in a typical 2-parent household. I was the only girl. I was sheltered, and when I first started working for DCF, Department of Children and Families, I was investigating child abuse, and it was a whole new world for me. And I would call my parents on a daily basis and say, thank you, thank you, thank you. And so.
Do you find it, there's a, when you wake up in the morning, or there's times when you reflect on the job that you do, that there's a bit of a mission or a call that you're a part of, or a bigger picture that get to be kind of a soldier in this, in a good way, a good soldier, like a soldier who's fighting for good?
I was always taught growing up, it's our responsibility to make this world a better place. And the people that I've worked with in the past and that I work with today, they're amazing. And they share that same mission and that same passion. We're here to make this world a better place and to help the families heal.
Gotcha. So right now, so we're in Martin County, we're in the state of Florida. And are there any ways to just give a brief introduction to us and to our listeners of just what are we looking at from a numerical standpoint of just the job that's in front of us as a society, of what are the needs from the foster care system?
Well, Circuit 19, which is our circuit, we cover Martin, St. Lucie, Indian River, and Okeechobee counties. And in this circuit, as of September, we have 135 homes for a total of 212 beds. So we have approximately.
That's what's available. That's what's filled.
That's the number of beds that we have total.
That's just what's on your Rhoda,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So on Rhoda's Rhoda, you have that's how much space you have available. A lot of it might be filled, but that's what you have. Okay.
Yes.
But the need is what? 10-fold, 100-fold more than that?
Well, right now we have about almost 100 children in shelters and in group homes that we want to bring them home and find homes for. We have amazing shelters in this area, but the whole push is to find homes for these children.
Gotcha. And so just in these 4 counties, you have 100 kids that are really the focus. They're the ones who are in the shelters. They're the ones who, for whatever reason, do not have a home. And you are trying to put them into a foster care system. And then what's the hope then?
The hope then is that we find a home for them. It could be a single parent, a single mother, a single father, an unmarried couple, a couple, just a family that's willing to be loving and compassionate and have patience and really help our children and help reach their full potential.
Gotcha. And that's one thing I think we want to bring up today is that there is, how do you all be a part of that, of helping a child reach his or her full potential, knowing that they probably have a full story by the time you meet them? If they're 6 months is one thing, but if you a kid who's 12, there's a story of how they got there. So it's not just finding the family, right? Well, what are the things that Camelot does and that you're part of to try to help that transition and ensure, or to do everything you can to allow the kid to really reach his or her potential?
So when we get out there and we network, and we're looking for people who are just loving and compassionate, and we offer them a training class. It's a 21-hour foster parent training class, and we teach them in that foster parent training class how to interact with the birth families, and we teach them about what behaviors to expect from the children because of the trauma that they've suffered, and we teach them about the supports that are available out there. We are a community. Nobody does it alone. Our foster parents have so many wonderful supports, including their licensing team and the greater team with our lead agency, Communities Connected for Kids, and then the foster parents as a family in general.
Gotcha.
So they're out there, and each case is unique and individual for the children. And our children face many different challenges, but we expect our parents to go out there and parent the children, attend school conferences, advocate for them, work with the birth parents if at all possible,
So
and
let's
help mentor them.
And let's help us to clarify more, since you were, as clergy person, people, we introduced the show talking about orphans. So we're not talking about the orphan system. We're talking about the foster care system.
Yes.
So the big difference for anyone listening, what's the big difference here? That you guys are not an adoption agency.
No.
And you're not an orphanage.
No. Our children have families, and the whole goal of foster care is reunification. And so about 80% of children do go home either to their parents or to their family members.
Now, that's a stat for Camelot, or a broader stat like in the state of Florida?
In the state of Florida.
80% get reunited.
80% either go home with their parents or, with family members, an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent.
Okay. And then, okay, great. So,
and when we also define in terms of children, what's the age range? I mean, obviously I assume we're talking, 18 and under, but what would be, in your experience with working with Camelot, in terms of the youngest that you guys have?
We've had children, newborn babies, all the way up to 17 years old. We've had calls for a 17-year-old coming from a group home who wants to spend the last few days or the last few months in care in a foster home. Can you find a home for this person? She wants to be back in her own community, and she wants to be closer to her family. So it's an age range. We have sibling groups. The biggest push, of course, is for teenagers, for school-age children, and for sibling groups.
So what is there a recurring, I'm sure the reason why a lot of these kids end up in the foster care system, or end up because we were just having coffee with you yesterday, and while we were talking to you, your phone was blowing up and you're like, oh, 13-year-old girl, trying to find a home for, and so you're just getting pinged for placement. So is there recurring themes of how these kids ended up in the foster care system? Like, you're like, wow, this issue is really plaguing our area right now, and this is what's leading to a lot of these kids ending up in, or is it just every case is so different and there's not too many common themes? Well,
drugs are the number one reason why children are removed. So that is the biggest, and those drugs, that leads to neglect as well. Maybe the parents can't care for the children because they're high and they're unable to meet their needs. Neglect, maybe not enough food in the house. Poverty is not a reason for abuse or for removal, but drugs, domestic exposure to domestic violence, sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think as you said, poverty is not the the impetus for removal, or for one to become a foster child.
So there's hope for you and me as parents.
Talk to my three.
Yeah.
But I think that it's important for us to recognize that, to be able to say, look, it doesn't discriminate. It's not for the poor. It's for all of us to be concerned with, is that there are these challenges, whether it be addiction or whether it be domestic abuse within the home. How does it work, Rhoda, in terms of how are you notified? How do the authorities, if there's a child that is being abused, or there's a child that has neglect, or a parent that is under substance abuse, how do you get involved? How do you know? And how does the state or the organization get involved?
So what happens is that somebody notices that there's abuse or something not right, and they suspect, and they call the abuse hotline, 1-800-96-ABUSE. I think you can also online file a report online as well, or you can. I think there's still a fax number as well. So that call is routed to the county where that child is located, and a child protective investigator or a CPI goes out. They review all the facts of the case, and they make a decision. They speak to everyone in the household. They speak to collaterals, and they make a decision along with their supervisor and children's legal services. And they say, okay, maybe we don't need to remove, or we can offer the family services, or there's really nothing going on here, or we need to remove. And a removal is a last ditch effort, because that is so traumatic for that child and that family.
That's good for people to know that, because at the church, we deal with situations where we're working with families and we're trying to help them out, and there's a big struggle going on. And we get worried that if we involve too much of the authorities, that it could lead to the dreaded DCF call. And if that DCF call happens, next thing we know, we're the reason why these kids got separated from their parent, right? And so that's a fear of ours as a church, is that we're trying to assist these families that might be struggling with some of the issues you mentioned before. How much can we engage the local agencies? Because there is a fear. There's a fear that, because when we hear DCF, before I started this job in ministry, I thought DCF was it. It was a death sentence. Once that get called, your kids are gone, right? If they start knocking on the door, next thing you know, kids are gone. And we fear as a church, like, we don't want to be the catalyst. And I don't know if you see that a lot with folks that you talk to, of like, I know there might be something going on in that house. I'm not sure, but I hope it could work out, because I don't want DCF to get involved, because then the kids are pulled from the family. Do you see that fear and that concern a lot?
I see that fear, but again, I was always taught, if you see something, say something. It's our responsibility. If nobody speaks up, then that child suffers. We're adults, and it's our responsibility to look out for the children.
Well, I mean,
they can
two of
offer-
us out of three of us are adults here.
Who are the two? You're one of them. You are one of them.
And if we don't speak up and say something, we can't protect the children, and those families never get a chance to heal and to get back together.
So you bring up a part of this. The foster care system is not only for, what I'm hearing from you, is not only for the kids who have been part of this, whatever chaos is happening at the home. It's also for the parents. It's also for the parents to have the time and space, hopefully, to heal and to take care of what they need to do, because you're trying to save the family. Yes. The foster care system is not here to pull families apart. You're saying, listen, there's something going on in this household. These parents or parent needs some help, whether it's sobriety, whether it's therapy, whatever they need to get back on their feet. And hopefully we're going to find another healthy home in the meantime, and then we can reunite and bring it back. I mean, is that the dream? Is that the vision?
That's the dream. Yes. And our foster parents are a part of that dream. Every case is individual and unique, but we want our foster parents, if at all possible, to mentor our birth parents. And that looks different in every circumstance. It doesn't mean that they're over at your house, but it means that, you call them, they can call you, you send photographs, you involve them in their children's lives, you teach them how to be a parent, you're there if they're having a bad time, and they can call you for support. And the more successful that our foster parents are able to work with our birth parents, the more successful reunification is.
Okay.
And that's what's best for our children.
Yeah, we had it. We had a family at our church who the picture you just painted exactly, and the foster mother was involved with the baby's mother, and they would talk and they would go out for coffee, and so she became kind of a mentor to her, and it was really beautiful. It was powerful, and there was a reuniting that happened.
But I also wonder too. I mean, are there policies in place for support from your organization for, say, that foster child who's put into a new home, for them to be able to talk about why, in terms of having, if I was 7 years old or 8 years old and I was in a brand new environment, why can't my mom care for me? Why am I not here? Does my mom or my father, do they not love me? Well, why am I in this place? So that kind of, I don't want to say denial, but it's the challenges that exist of, what did I do wrong? Why am I here? What did I cause? As opposed to, the situation that you are in, we're trying to give you a better opportunity. Are there counselors and that type of stuff to try and take that child through a process so that they're not blaming themselves?
So there are therapists available. Camelot, we license traditional foster homes, and then we have a higher level of care, and we provide therapists for our therapeutic foster homes. Those are children that have, because of the trauma that they have suffered, that they have a higher level of need, and they require more therapy, more intense help. So, but yes, absolutely. Our children feel guilty
Right.
Yeah, they feel the guilt. They blame themselves.
Right.
They go through, the stages of grief and denial. And then our foster parents are there to support them. And then we also have therapists there from the community, behavior analysts. Each county has a foster parent mentor that our foster parents can turn to. It's an incredible source of support. Our lead agency also has people there to work with the foster parents. They're incredibly supportive as well.
Rhoda, this is
And as well as the licensing specialists there too.
and which you are a licensed
Yes,
specialist. Rhoda, this is awesome. We're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, to get into maybe some of the fears and concerns that maybe people who are listening to the show might have about the foster care system, and also for those who might be thinking about it, maybe there's some things that you can help them to think about, to maybe discern and process about if they're wondering to become either a foster parent or another way that they can help support foster parents or support the foster community. So we're going to take a quick break. The number here is 772-220-9788. If you have experience with the foster care system or some questions that you have about the foster care system, or how does our faith inform our support of the foster care system, please give us a call here, 772-220-9788. This is a priest and a rabbi, and we'll be back in just a hot sec.
Welcome back, stewards. Welcome back to a rabbi and a priest walk into a radio show.
Wait, what? I thought it was a priest and a rabbi. You and I had a big, long discussion about that.
Well, I thought we'd change it up. We don't want to be stagnant. So
then we have to change all the branding. We have to change all the coffee mugs, the T-shirts, all of our swag.
No, we just reverse it.
Okay.
So I become on your left. But welcome back to A Priest and a Rabbi. We are here in our studios discussing and looking at the amazing opportunity of foster care and the foster care system, how it relates to our faith communities, what we can do to support, and also looking about some of the challenges that exhibit itself throughout our process. And we do have an amazing guest on our show, Rhoda Cantor, who is here to inform and educate us.
Thank you.
We love pregnant pauses here. Pregnant pauses are key to a really good show. Yeah. So Rhoda, we were talking during the break here about what to do with so let's say there's someone listening right now and they're like, you know what? I'm glad the priest or a rabbi and a priest talked about this, about the foster care. And yes, there are, the last time I checked on I was looking, there's over, I think in the country, something about 500,000 kids who are kind of involved in the foster care system. But there's probably huge and great need for parents, for people to step up. And let's say there's someone right now who's listening, who's saying, maybe it's sort of like you when I asked you about faith. You're like, yes. Do you want to be a foster care person? Me, sure. What can you respond to maybe some of the concerns, fears, worries, insecurities that come with someone starting to maybe think about foster care parent and respond to that bill? Nothing like Catholic guilt, but we're a distant second.
Where do you think they all got it from?
The Jews?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
We invented Jewish guilt.
You see, so you always said you're an afterthought. You guys are the creators. You're the original. You're the OG. Jesus was a rabbi.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think the biggest fear that I hear all the time is, I can never do it. I can never say goodbye. To which I always respond, the two biggest qualities that a foster parent can have are patience and compassion. If you could say hello, you can spend time with and love that child and attach to that child. And when you do say goodbye, it does hurt, but you know that you've helped heal that child and helped heal that family.
And I would assume that would be one of the biggest challenging stumbling blocks is if I foster care to a child, there's no defined time, right? It's not like I can say, sure, I'd like to be a foster parent. I want a 3-year-old and I'm going to foster that child until they're 18 years old and I'll have that relationship. I could foster a child and it could be a few days, it could be a few months, it could be a few years, but there's always, in some degree, as you said, of that goal of reunification. But I, as a foster parent, I have to also deal with the loss. I'm investing myself into this to only be hurt at the end of having loss of losing this experience, losing this.
And Rhoda, I just want to jump in real quickly. There was a Christian blog who's a foster care parent who took on that exact concern that Rabbi's talking about, and her response was, "It's not about you. It's not about you." And I know that doesn't help a foster parent whose heart is breaking because they just spent 9 months, 6 months, 3 months, a year with this child and grew attached to them. But she's saying, you get into this because it's not about you. It's not about who I want to be a parent. It's like you want to be a part, to your point, Rhoda. I want to be part of the solution. And there's a brokenness in our society. And I want to step up and be a part of the healing and to bring a part of this healing and to help a child's life, a family's life. But I'm sure that's not probably the best call for you when you have a concerned foster parent. You say, it's not about you.
Well, I think the people who get into fostering have a call to fostering. It's on their heart. Somebody literally told me the other day that she begged her mother growing up to foster, and she's seriously thinking about it, and it's been on her heart for a long time. So I think going in with a realistic expectation, knowing that the children in your home may be with you for several weeks, for several months, maybe for a year or more, but eventually that goal is for them to go home. I think that helps, but also having support on your end, having your network of friends and family that you can lean on for support, your religious institution, your church, your temple, other foster parents for support.
Can you be single and do this?
Absolutely. You can be a single parent. You could be a single father, a single mother. You can be an unmarried couple. We accept gay couples, lesbian couples. We don't
Well, you could be an
discriminate.
unmarried couple. So
An
you could
unmarried couple.
You could be
absolutely.
two people living in sin. I mean, two people living together in a household. But you could be two people who are just dating who decide to live together and foster.
If you have a stable home. Absolutely. And we would come out, and part of what we do is we go out and we do a home study on the home while you're in class. We talk about the licensing requirements and the physicality of the house and how it's supposed to be set up. And we do a home study on the family, and we get down and dirty and we talk about the family's history, how they've dealt with stress before, what their motivation is. And
So in the event that, let's say you have a foster child and you have a foster family that has taken in this child, and let's say they are of, just to bring it back to a religious context, they may be, I don't know, Episcopalian.
Episcopalian.
Right? Episcopalian.
Yes. There you go.
Right. And I'm Jewish. And I mean, are there constraints, or are there conversations that must happen with the birth parents to be able to say, you are of a different, faith than I, please know, I'm not trying to indoctrinate. I'm not trying to proselytize. I'm not trying to convert, but, I do have certain traditions that we do in our family, and we would like,
if the kid is Jewish going into an Episcopal household, and then me as the priest want to say, I would want to pray with this kid. And at night we talk about scripture, and I want to do that with this kid. Would that be okay? I mean, because a lot of these people who are might be thinking about this is a faith call. I mean, if someone is reading scripture and it says, wow, it keeps on telling me to care for the orphan and the widow, I want to do this, but I also, it's a faith call for me. I want to share that with this kid. Will they be able to do that?
So we have many families that have very different faiths. We have families that were Jewish. We've had some that were Muslim. We've had a lot that are they're Christian, but they're not particularly religious. And then we have some that are very religious as well. So whatever your faith, your family culture, your family traditions are, we want you to include the children in your family activities and your traditions. We want you to also include the children's religion and culture into your home. And that's a beautiful way of working with the birth families and reaching out to them, saying, hey, what do you all do? What are some of your faith and traditions? But you cannot force a child to attend a particular service.
Okay.
So when we speak to our foster parents, when they're going in training, we ask that have a backup plan. If you're a family that goes to church all the time and you have a child that does not want to go to church, plan ahead. Have a backup babysitter that can babysit that child while you're at church.
If you, this is a priest and a rabbi, and we are talking about foster care under the umbrella of the scriptural call to care for the orphan and the widow. And if you've had experience with the foster care, or you have questions about it or fears of it, give us a call here, 220-9788. That is 772-220-9788. And Rod, let's go back to this again.
But I'm really interested in the concept that, let's say you have a child and of a different faith, and we bring them into our homes and we expose them to our belief and our system. And as the weeks or perhaps even months that go by, they experience and feel a sense of affinity to that, as opposed to what they were born with and raised with. And I could only imagine that tension if they go back with reunification of, well, I experienced this, Jewish service and I really loved it, or I experienced this Episcopalian service and really loved it. I think I want to align myself there, right? And I could see from a biological parent perspective of, well, had this not happened, these thoughts wouldn't have entered into your mind. So in terms of almost not blaming the system, but being able to say, I mean, how does that work?
Rhoda, I would imagine that there's probably, is there bigger fish to fry that happened within the household than, has there been a conflict of philosophy or religion being introduced to a child, and once they go back, the biological family is like, dude, WTF? Like, I just wanted this kid to have 18 months off, and they came back and now they're a Jesus freak.
In the 12 years that I've been doing this, I cannot think of any issues where that's really happened. I mean, it could be, there's a possibility, but I'm not personally aware of it. I've had children say to their foster parents, I don't want to go to church. And that's for many different reasons. Maybe they want to stay in on Sunday morning and play video games instead. Or
so let me ask you this. I knew that when we got you on the show that there was a time before a family in our parish started being an active foster family, that when I was a kid and learning about the foster care system, that there was a fear or a concern over, what's it like going to these foster homes and foster families, that the foster family themselves can be dysfunctional. Not that the biological family was, more or less the system was messy, and the people who get elected to become the foster families, those homes can get a little messy, and maybe they're not good people. Now, listen, none of this is based in fact at all. I'm just saying this is the mythology that was floating around in my head. So why is that? Because I think I might not be alone. There's other people who think that the foster care system could have some shady folks involved in it, and where does that come from? And is that true?
I think that's the fear of unknown. But we work very closely with our foster parents. There's a lot of people in and out of their homes. The children have a dependency case manager that sees them at least once every 20 to 25 days. Most of our children have a court-appointed or guardian ad litem that go and visit them at home or at school. Our children are in daycare or in school, so there's exposure there. And you have your licensing specialist in your home at least once every 90 days or more often as necessary. So there's a lot of eyes in that home, in addition to maybe therapists or behavior analysts that may be working with the children and their families as well. So, and we're pretty open to our foster parents. We encourage them to communicate. So if there's an issue or problem, we want them to be able to reach out to us. And so I think all people that do this, they have a heart to do this. I don't think
in your experience,
in my experience, I think if you don't have the right motivation to do this, you're not going to last. If you're there to make money off the children, that's not going to happen.
Have you ever had to deny people and weed them out, say, I'm not, I don't think you're really called for this?
I think most of the time that happens during the licensing process, and people come to that realization themselves in class when we talk about the license.
Have you ever had to drop the kibosh on someone and say, I'm sorry, but thanks, but no thanks, and we'll call you, don't call us?
We don't say it quite like that, but it's happened, yes. And even after their license and they've taken a child, maybe they had a good experience, but then they realized, okay, I've got so many other things going on in my life right now. It's not for me for right now, but maybe I'll come back to it later.
Are there some baby steps that people can take, and are there some other roles that people can play in the foster care whole world, that maybe they're not parents, but are there other ways if someone says, you know what, I feel the call. I know there's a lot of kids out there who need support. There's a lot of foster families that need support. I don't feel the call to actually take the kids in, but I want to do something. I want to be part of the solution. What are some other roles they can do?
Well, you can go online and to www.camelotcommunitycare.org. You can be a volunteer. You can invite your friends and family to honor your birthday through donations to Camelot. Invite Camelot to speak at any clubs that you belong to.
Nightclubs?
Could be.
Cool.
Just no doorman.
It's a reference to my ridiculous one-man play.
Rhoda, you said in terms of volunteer, what does that look like in terms of if I'm not ready yet for myself to be able to foster a child, but I want to help in some way? What are the volunteer opportunities? What does that look like?
Well, you can call us up. You can, we set up for events. You can help us set up for events. You can donate supplies that we use for our events. You can donate your time. And
are there, I saw something online. There's something about that you can mentor. And I don't know if this is through Camelot, but maybe through other organizations or through the state. You can you can be a mentor for the foster kids, or you can just support the foster family. So I'm thinking of this family in our church who already have 3 kids, who took on a foster child. they did it out because they feel the call, but maybe that foster family needs, and so if you know foster families, I don't know if there's an official way to do it, but for you to support them, bring them food, offer to babysit the biological kids so they can get some time off, but
Those are all great ways of doing that. Collecting school supplies, backpacks. Children come into care throughout the school year. And usually at the beginning of the school year, there's many opportunities to donate school supplies, but our children come in throughout the school year. So if they come in the middle of the school year, they need school uniforms, school clothes.
And they would bring that to Camelot.
You can bring it to Camelot. You can bring it to the case management agency. There is a foster parent closet also as well.
Just right here in Stewart?
In Stewart. There's one in Stewart and there's one in Vero.
Okay, good. Because I remember, yes, there was our St. Mary's thrift shop recently there was a big call for pajamas, that the foster care closet was out of pajamas. And so we did a big drive for it. So they put the call out, and
pajamas, underwear, socks, suitcases. I know at the Martin County Service Center, the Communities Connected for Kids office, they used to, I don't know if they still do, have a huge room with suitcases. So when children leave our home, whether they turn 18 and they move on, or they go home with their stuff and in suitcases instead of garbage bags. Because when they come into care,
right.
Very often they come in with Publix bags or trash bags. And what message does that send to the children?
Sure. Let's talk. Is there any way, because I know there's the struggle that happens after you leave the foster, let's say you age out of the foster care system. So now you're 18 and you move on. And I would assume, are there resources or where people can support or be a part of is there a transition type of program that helps kids who've been in foster care their whole life and now have aged out, and now the world's like, hey man, figure it out?
So our foster parents hopefully remain in our children's lives. Even if they don't adopt them, hopefully they remain in their children's lives and they remain as a source of support. We have what we call the Road to Success program through our lead agency, Communities Connected for Kids, and they work with the teenagers in foster care to help prepare them for what the next step is, whether it's going to school, getting a job. So they're a source of support as well. Our children can decide to remain in care up until their 22nd birthday. That's extended foster care.
Okay.
And you do not have to be a licensed foster parent to have a child in extended foster care.
What does that look like, extended foster care?
They're 18 to 21. And so they're living in your home and they're,
What type of follow-up does Camelot or any of the other institutions and organizations do once, say, a child has been reunified with their parents? Is there a follow-up with the child, with the foster family? Looking at, as we discussed earlier, the issue of loss and, from a perspective of almost mourning the loss that, the child has been reunified, but how do I live my life after this experience? Or how does the child, what's their transition like when they go back to their biological parents? Or, is that within your purview in terms of what you guys do as well with the follow-up after?
So the follow-up after the children go home, case management remains in with the families, the birth families, for up to 6 months post-placement, post-reunification. But as far as some of our families do keep in contact with the birth families, and they're there to support the families and the children. And we've had many cases where they remain in their lives as grandparents or as aunts and uncles, and they babysit. And unfortunately, sometimes if the children come back into care, the birth parents feel more comfortable because they know where the children are going back to.
So that's an interesting comment that you just said too, which is, in your experience, is there a high rate of those children who are placed into foster care that get reunited with their parents who then slip and go back to whatever behavior has been done in the past, whether it be addiction or what have you, and then that child goes back into the foster care system, almost of that, I don't even know what the term is.
Recidivism?
Sure.
I have seen that happen. I don't have the exact percentage in front of me, but, and with drugs being the number one reason why children are removed.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as support for the foster families, when the children leave, it's their children grieve too. If they have animals or pets, the dogs are looking around. Hey, where are these? So our foster families can lean on other foster families for support. They lean on their faith, and they could decide to take a break for a few weeks or for a month. Hey, we need to get our heads straight before we take another child. Or then we have some foster families that are like, bring on the next child.
And
so every family is different.
When you say that, there could be a foster family that takes a child in for a couple weeks or a few days. I mean, are we also talking in that instance where a foster family says, look, we're going away for a vacation. I need a couple weeks just to, as you said, clear my head. That child then has to get placed somewhere. So is that child then get placed within a family that says I'll take for 14 days, and then when the foster families get back, the child it just seems too transitional, that there's too much going on for a child to process properly.
So if our families take a break after the children leave, that's not an issue. If they decide to take a break before taking another child, if they need to travel out of state and it's an emergency and they can't take the child with them, or if they just need a break for a weekend, we have what's called respite. And so we have other families that are available to foster the children until they can take them back. We have some families who enjoy only taking children in for short-term or respite placements. They don't want to do long-term.
So
the
is that
majority
also-
of ours do long-term.
Is that also
guys,
a-
I want to jump in here just because we are getting right here to the end of the show, and I want you to be able to close up, Rhoda, what you're talking about here. So, Rhoda, for the folks who are listening right now, they can definitely contact you. And how do they get in contact with you?
Well, you can look online at www.camelotcommunitycare.org, or you can call our office at 772-226-6235 and ask about how you can become a foster parent, and we'll schedule an orientation with you, and then we'll talk about the classes.
And you're also on Facebook, so they can find
Facebook,
Camelot
yes.
on Facebook. That's
Yes.
there. I also find a book that's out there that got a lot of good reviews. It's called Faith and Foster Care by Dr. John DeGarmo. So if you're a person of faith and curious and you want to discern, and Dr. John goes through his own process of becoming a foster parent from a faith perspective, you can check that out and get that on Amazon. So thank you so much, Rhoda, for being here. God bless you for the work that you do out there. And for any churches or people want to bring this to your house of faith, give Rhoda a call, and I'm sure she'll give a presentation. Go fight the
Absolutely.
good fight. Peace.